Distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, please receive a warm greeting from Colombia. I would like to be with you, but I have a problem this afternoon, so let me send you this message. This high level space calls us to an urgent reflection, the role of civil society in a multilateralism that today faces profound tensions. As we all know, the ongoing reforms toward the commemoration of UN 80, together with the budgetary crisis and the weakening of human rights protection mechanisms, threaten to diminish the influence of organizations that have historically been the voice of those without a voice. It is precisely in moments of global uncertainty that we must reaffirm the value of civic participation in sustaining the democratic order and the rule of law. Contemporary attacks on the multilateral system, the prioritization of security driven approaches, and the increasing restrictions on civil society's access to the Human Rights Council, particularly after the pandemic, have concrete effects. Less first hand information, reduced international monitoring capacity, and weaker connections between local territories and the global human rights architecture. This risk, widely identified by Friedrich-Ebert Foundation and International Commission of Jurists, implies backsliding on normative, institutional, and political achievements that have taken decades to build. For this reason, it is essential to recognize that no reform process of the United Nations system can come at the expense of citizen participation. The history of international human rights law shows that civil society has been a driving force for legal innovation, decisive denunciations, and the development of standards we now consider fundamental. Its weakening would affect not only the legitimacy of the system, but also its effectiveness in protecting victims, communities, and defenders, who urgently require responses at the international level. This panorama demands adopting a clear position, strengthening the conditions for civil and social organizations, ethnic communities, women's movements, trade unions, and human rights defenders to participate without fear, without barriers, and with genuine capacity to influence. In a world marked by conflicts, inequalities, and environmental crisis, civil society is not an accessory actor, but an indispensable pillar for ensuring that global transformations are guided by human dignity. Civil society participation has been crucial to the development of the United Nations, especially its human rights pillar. From my personal experience, I can mention the 1996 Declaration of the Commission on Human Rights on the human rights situation in Colombia, which ordered the creation of the Office of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights in Colombia. This declaration was updated annually until 2005 by the Commission on Human Rights and was ratified by the Human Rights Council in 2006. All of these decisions were made possible by the robust action taken since 1990 by human rights organizations from Colombia and by Latin American, European, American, and international organizations such as the International Commission of Jurists. But I can also mention multiple achievements of the Human Rights Commission and the United Nations Human Rights Council that would not have been possible without the determined, persistent, patient, and stimulating activity of civil society. The Declaration of Human Rights Defenders, adopted by the General Assembly in 1998, the additional protocol to the Convention Against Torture in 2002, and the subsequent creation of the Subcommittee on Prevention of Torture. The principles of combating impunity recognized by the Commission in 2005. The principles on the rights of victims of violations to seek remedies and obtain reparation adopted in the same year by the United Nations General Assembly. The Declaration on Enforced Disappearances and then the Convention adopted in 2006. And so I could mention all the human rights covenants and conventions, the committees created by human rights treaties, the special procedures, both thematic and country-specific, and the mechanisms created by the Human Rights Council. Behind all of them is civil society. This enormous and undeniable contribution by civil society to the development of standards and implementation of international actions for the respect, protection, and redress of human rights has led to a gradual reduction in state resistance to civil society participation in United Nations activities. Few states still feel uncomfortable with the reports of and proposals of human rights organizations, although some of them are powerful and undermine this important contribution of civil society to multilateralism and the international community. But others go further in recognizing the value of civil society contributions, such as my country, which has appointed human rights defenders as ambassadors to the United Nations in Geneva and to the Organization of American States in Washington, as well as to the Inter-American Court in San Jose, Costa Rica, and to the United Nations in New York. Other states should follow this example. Without a doubt, things would improve greatly. In this context, Colombia reaffirms its strong commitment to a public policy that recognizes not only the historic and transformative role of civil society in the development of international human rights law, but also its indispensable nature for guiding public action in the present and the future. With the conviction that a strong democracy is built from the bottom up, the 2022-2026 National Development Plan, Colombia World Power of Life, places social organizations at the center of development planning, peace building, and the defense of life in all its forms. The participation of more than 250,000 people in the binding regional dialogues confirms this commitment. Public policies conceived in a deliberative, inclusive manner and in permanent dialogue with citizens, understood as strategic allies of the state in the country's transformation. Likewise, the National Development Plan promotes a public-popular alliance that recognizes civil society as an essential actor in national transformation by establishing that expanding, modernizing, and diversifying participation mechanisms is not only a democratic exercise, but a structural condition for advancing social justice, environmental justice, and the territorial implementation of total peace. In Colombia today, the contribution of social organizations is reflected in increasingly decisive influence on issues such as territorial planning, community economies, environmental protection, and knowledge governance. This vision reaffirms, consistent with the spirit of UN 80, that democracy is strengthened when civil society acts as guarantor, counterweight, and co-author of the public sphere, and that is the responsibility of states to ensure the conditions for its historic contribution to continue growing. I wish finally that this meeting will be fruitful and that the reflections shared here will help recognize the historic role and strengthen the future role of civil society in the international human rights system. May this high-level dialogue allow us to advance toward concrete, sustainable, and ambitious proposals that guarantee a multilateralism that is more open, more inclusive, and more protective of human dignity. Thank you.